This is like the first year where I don't have this cynical view of Valentine's Day because I am nothing but filled with love for my family and friends. So I actually wanted to take part in a Valentine's Day type of video and recommend you my favorite romance movies. Yes, I do have my mic clipped to a bookmark because I am a turtleneck enthusiast and I find it very difficult to attach a love to this shirt. So just kind of stick with it, you know? It's a very casual vibe. I've split this up into 4 different categories, and let's start with the first category, which are rom-coms. These 3 movies I really enjoyed, and I can see myself rewatching over and over again, and I have rewatched over and over again because they are just so delightful. They have this lighthearted feeling that just picks up your mood and really makes you happy. And let's start with my favorite rom-com ever, which is To All the Boys I've Loved Before. To All the Boys I Loved Before stole my heart as a book, and when it became a movie, I was so enamored by how they captured the essence of a Jenny Han book and translated it beautifully into a film with this pastel hue, this adorable music. You can tell by the way that they designed the room, the way that they picked out her outfits, that she has a very distinct personality that comes across the screen to people who may have not read the book beforehand. We follow our main character, Lara Jane, who is a romantic at heart. She writes these love letters to all her crushes, but rather than sending these letters to her crushes to confess her feelings for them, she puts it away in a hat box and kind of buries her feelings in her closet. And one day her younger sister Kitty finds these letters and decides to mail them out to all of Lara Jean's crushes. And I love this movie because the banter is on point. It is just so beautifully filmed. It has a really distinct style and aesthetic. I've seen this movie over and over again and I can never get tired of it. I don't necessarily recommend the other 2 movies in this trilogy because they just didn't capture the essence of what the first movie did because they switched directors, and you can really feel that in the second and third film. But the first film as a standalone is a fantastic rom-com that is now a true classic to me. Now let's move on to a rom-com that I have also rewatched over and over again, and when I initially watched it with one of my best friends, Marg, we were like sobbing in the theater because it was genuinely just that beautiful, and it is Crazy Rich Asians. I've never watched a movie and sobbed just because I'm overwhelmed by the beauty of a film. Besides Pride and Prejudice, I always cry about Pride and Prejudice, but Crazy Rich Asians is so magnificent. From the set to the cast, which is absolutely stacked, to the wardrobe, to the overall feeling of Crazy Rich Asians, you can't help but admire the opulence in this movie because, of course, we follow a bunch of rich Asian people who are getting ready for a wedding, and it's so interesting that this entire rom-com is centered around a wedding about these 2 characters who we don't necessarily care about, but it's the people who are attending the wedding that are the central part of the story, and we get to follow these different family members as they are going through their individual drama, but also the drama of what it's like to date into this family and these standards that are set, and the way that it's very rigid and people will judge you if you are not as rich and affluent as them. And overall, we follow our main character Rachel and her boyfriend Nick, who is a part of this rich family, and we get to see their trials and tribulations throughout this entire preparation for this wedding. Is he going to stand up for her? Is he going to introduce her to this really complex family that has a lot of history behind the scenes that she doesn't know about? It's just a beautiful movie. I cried because there were so many emotions rising up throughout the entire film. One, it's so beautiful, but 2, it's a really touching movie about family, about standing up for your partner, and the different facets of culture and the different standards that are set within the culture. So I really love Crazy Rich Asians. I think I've seen it like 3 or 4 times. It is just a fantastic film that I cannot recommend enough. And let's move on to my last rom-com, which is a total classic, and it is When Harry Met Sally. When Harry Met Sally truly influences my wardrobe. Even though I've only seen this movie once, I continually think about the wardrobe and the aesthetic and the overall feel of this film because it's so distinct and it's so memorable. And they just have this really undeniable chemistry that you can feel throughout every single scene. And I definitely want to rewatch When Harry Met Sally because, again, I've only seen it once and I just loved the way that this film felt. The wardrobe slaps. I have so many pins of Sally's wardrobe on my Pinterest because everything that she wears, even everything that Harry wears, is something that I want to emulate in my personal wardrobe because it's absolutely fantastic. Now let's move on to Forbidden Love. It's those types of stories that these two characters are yearning for one another and you can feel the tension, but there's something between them that can prevent them from being together. So this is definitely like my bread and butter when it comes to romance stories. And let's start with a classic, a movie I have seen possibly 10 to 12 to 15 times, and it is Dirty Dancing. Dirty Dancing has a grip on me and my best friend Sarah. Every time we would have a sleepover with one another, which was like every single month in high school, we would rewatch Dirty Dancing and swoon over Patrick Swayze and fall in love with Jennifer Grey's hair and style. We follow our main character, Baby, who goes with her family to this summer camp in the Catskills. It's like a rich person summer camp where the entire family spends the summer with one another in these cute lodges. They do cute activities with one another. I always wonder how these parents are able to take off 2 months of their summer off of work to go to this camp, but I just think I'm in a lower tax bracket and I don't have the ability to understand how that works. But Dirty Dancing follows Baby as she gets to know this one dancer named Johnny who is a little bit older, and it's a little bit risque, but they fall in love with one another over the course of the summer when he is trying to teach her how to dance. And it's really fun because Patrick Swayze is like a really good dancer and Jennifer Grey is not known for her dancing, so you can see her actually try to be good at dancing in this film. And one of my favorite fun facts is that they actually hated each other. Like Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze do not like each other, and there are so many fun facts about this film where there's a scene where Patrick Swayze is trying to teach Jennifer Grey how to dance and he actually rolls his eyes at her, and that is something that Patrick Swayze actually felt within his soul. He was not acting, that was actually him, and they just kept it in the movie. They did not like each other, but let me tell you, these two are the most professional actors I have ever seen because their love in this film, palpable. I can feel it in every single moment, and the chemistry is off the charts. There are so many quotes from this film that people quote in other pieces of media. There are so many moments that are replicated in other pieces of media. It's a classic romance movie that I just fell in love with, and I cannot stop rewatching. Every time I rewatch it, I'm so giddy and in love with Patrick Swayze, and it's really funny because my mom and my best friend's mom both love Patrick Swayze, so it feels like they like passed down their love for him to us, and we can never get enough of Dirty Dancing. Also, the soundtrack, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Now let's get into another forbidden love story that has completely crushed my heart and soul, and it is Brief Encounter. If you have been watching my channel for a while, you're probably like, I'm so tired of her talking about Brief Encounter, but I'm not tired of talking about Brief Encounter because it is genuinely one of the best love stories I have ever seen in film, and it is set during the 1940s, and we follow a woman who is a housewife, and she takes the train often to go shopping, and when she's at the train station she comes across a doctor who again is always also traveling, and they spark a connection with one another, but the catch is they're both married. So clearly their love story is very much forbidden, but we only see them in these brief moments, hence Brief Encounter, where they have this undeniable chemistry. They can truly see one another for who they are beyond just being a doctor, beyond just being a housewife. And this movie I watched with my movie club in my Discord, and it was life-changing. Everything about it, from the cinematography to the acting, was superb, and I truly appreciate the journey that I went on when I watched Brief Encounter. I think if I had seen this as a housewife during like the 40s and 50s and I went home from the movie theater, I would be inconsolable. I would be bedridden for at least a day, just sobbing my heart out, because the amount of emotion, the amount of tension, the amount of yearning, they're telling me it's a 6.0 on the yearning Richter scale. Yeah, off the charts. Another movie that is gorgeous, stunning, amazing, it's like food for your eyes, is In the Mood for Love. Again, we follow two people who are married, very risque, and we find out that their spouses are having an affair. So they decide to form a friendship and a bond between one another because they are both facing a situation that is very unique to both of them. And this is set in such a gorgeous landscape. It's a cityscape with a lot of neon colors. There's a lot of usage of the color red to signify this deep passion that they have for one another, and the color is superb. It is delicious to look at. I am obsessed with In the Mood for Love because it's very similar to that of Brief Encounter, where you cannot deny this chemistry between these characters. But the difference between Brief Encounter and In the Mood for Love is Brief Encounter, these people are soaking up every single moment with one another, and they are trying to talk as much as possible. They're trying to get to know one another as much as possible. In the Mood for Love is more of a quiet film. It's the type of film where these people can just appreciate their presence and their silence with one another. And it's that moment of silence that they share that really matters most, because that's when they feel most comfortable with one another. I highly recommend it if you want to study color and lighting and just this gorgeous cinematography where they use like these slow motion moments to really bring home the fact that this movie feels like honey come to life. My final forbidden love story that I cannot stop thinking about is Summertime, and it follows Katharine Hepburn, who is taking a solo trip to Venice, which is like so iconic of her, and she's enjoying her time. She is feeling a little bit lonely because obviously she sees these couples, but then she goes to the town square in Venice and she comes across an Italian man who sweeps her off her feet. And we all know that this love story is going to end by the end of the summer because of course it's called Summertime, and of course the romances that you may have on a vacation may not last an entire lifetime. It's just those moments that matter the most. But also it's a beautiful exploration of Venice, and I love any movie, any book, anything set in Italy. Italy is one of my favorite places that I've been to, and I feel so called to Italy, and Summertime is a love letter to Venice in a way because we get to see so many different aspects of it. We get to see the locals, we get to see the people who are just staying there briefly, and we get to see Katharine Hepburn explore the city both by herself and with this man, and you can feel the way that Venice touches her. It's just a beautiful movie that I would highly recommend if you are looking to get into old Hollywood. Everything about it is beautiful. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the man, and is that weird to admit for a love story that I'm recommending to you? I'm not the biggest fan of him, and I think that's fine because we're following her, chasing her happiness and taking a risk for once in her life. And sometimes the person that you take that risk with isn't the best person in the world. Do you know what I mean? Where you're like, this person's not the best person for me, but it's gonna offer me something new, fresh, and fun just for a little bit. So let's go along with it. So that's how I feel about Summertime. Katharine Hepburn is like the true star of the film. The man is just there to help enhance the experience, you know? Now let's move on to historical fiction movies. There's nothing I love more than a historical fiction movie because the tension between the two characters who can't like just grab each other and kiss is so palpable, and I love the fact that the sign of the times is the thing that's also preventing them from being together. So I have two films that I have to recommend among the other films that I just recommended, which are set in the past. And the first one that I have to recommend is A Room with a View. This is another movie that I saw with my movie club in my Discord, and this is also another movie that is set in Italy. Can you tell that I love Italy? So let me read you the letterboxed summary because it's a little bit convoluted, but like in a good way. So we follow Lucy Honeychurch and her chaperone Charlotte, and they find themselves in Florence in a room without a view. So fellow guests Mr. Emerson and son George step in to remedy that situation. So they offer their hotel room, which has a really nice view of Florence. Meeting Emersons could change Lucy's life forever, but once back in England, how will her experiences in Tuscany affect her marriage plans? And this is just another beautiful historical fiction movie where the setting is beautiful, the wardrobe is beautiful, and what I really enjoyed about this is that we're not just following Lucy and George as they are yearning for one another, but we're also following the side characters who play a large role in this romance. We follow her chaperone, we follow George's father, and those characters all have their own moment. And it's just a very fun romance movie that is so beautifully filmed. It has this really soft hue to it that feels so effortless and feels like you could just like sink into a cloud. And I really enjoyed A Room with a View. I feel like my movie club is always watching such amazing movies that introduce me to stories that I've been meaning to watch for years upon years, and I never get around to it. So this forces me to watch movies that have been on my list forever, and I loved A Room with a View. Now I get to gab about one of my favorite movies of all time, which is on my Letterboxd top 4, and it is Pride and Prejudice. Everything about Pride and Prejudice is my jam. From the yearning to the setting to the costumes to the fact that Keira Knightley is the star of this movie. I've never seen the BBC Pride and Prejudice, but genuinely no one can convince me that that one is better than this Pride and Prejudice. I don't care about accuracy. I don't care about which one is more faithful to the book. I care about vibes and I care about yearning. And you know what Pride and Prejudice 2005 has? Vibes and yearning. And Keira Knightley, you know what? Like, don't make me mad. This one is the best adaptation of all time, and it is so beautiful, so opulent, so full of heart, so full of soul. Every aspect of Pride and Prejudice makes me swoon. Do you know what it's like to watch Pride and Prejudice and hear Mr. Darcy just talk to Elizabeth Bennet and you burst into tears? That's what I've done multiple times. Pride and Prejudice is a movie that I cannot stop rewatching, cannot stop recommending, because every aspect of it is beautiful, perfect, stunning, a work of art. I think that every single shot of this movie feels like a beautiful landscape worthy of being in a Met. I'm so passionate about Pride and Prejudice, from the chemistry to Mrs. Bennet, who is such a wonderful character and I love her so much, to the fact that Keira Knightley is supposedly not wearing makeup and she just looks that beautiful. I'm obsessed with Pride and Prejudice. I know you're wondering, Olivia, what's your favorite scene in Pride and Prejudice? And thank you so much for asking. I'm really passionate about this, in case you can't tell. My favorite scene of Pride and Prejudice is when Lizzie and Mr. Darcy are dancing with one another, and this is the first moment that Mr. Darcy makes the effort to go and dance, because Lizzie previously told him that it's a little bit tacky that you refuse to dance, like you refuse to have fun. And he's like, okay, I really like this girl, I want to dance with her, and they dance with one another, but they have this delicious tension because they are currently mad at one another, and when they are dancing, everyone around them disappears and they are the only two people in the ballroom. When I tell you, that scene changed my life. Every time I see it, I want to scream because it's so beautiful, so ethereal, so gorgeous. Oh, Keira Knightley, I yearn for her, you know? There's nothing more formative to a childhood than watching a Keira Knightley film and going, yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's move on to my last category, which are honorable mentions, and I think I need to come up with a better name for these movies, because these are movies that have a love story, but like, they're really sad. These are not movies that you should put on to feel good. These are just movies with a beautiful love story that I think you should appreciate and watch, but I don't necessarily recommend them if you're trying to feel like uplifted. So let's start with Atonement, another Keira Knightley film. Oh my god, James McAvoy. I yearn for him too. I yearn for him at a level that I didn't realize I would until I saw Atonement. I watched Atonement right after finishing the audiobook for the original text, and I was like, let me slap on Atonement and watch the movie to compare and contrast the movie and the book. When I tell you, I genuinely think that Atonement is the best book to movie adaptation ever made. I'm not saying that lightly. It is the best book to movie adaptation because it is word for word exactly like the book. It takes a lot of skill to translate a book perfectly into a film, and it's very rare to see because usually directors take out certain scenes, change the dialogue. When I finished the book and when I watched the movie, I had this naive sense that they would change the ending, that everything would be okay and we would all be happy and atonement wouldn't be exactly like how the book is. But then we got 20 minutes into the movie and I was like, this is exactly like the book, and I mean that in the saddest way possible. Word for word. Do you know how impressive that is to translate a book word for word into a movie? I've only seen that done twice, and that is with The Road and Atonement, and these two are perfect book to movie adaptations, and I mean that in the saddest way possible because they are quite possibly the saddest books I've ever read. So Atonement was impressive from that standpoint, but also the cinematography. This is made by the same director as Pride and Prejudice. That man truly knows what it's like to yearn. That man truly knows how to utilize Keira Knightley to the fullest potential, because her acting in this movie is so gorgeous, so heartbreaking. Her iconic green dress, I cannot stop thinking about it. I want to own that one day because it is one of the most beautiful pieces of clothing that I ever seen in a film. James McAvoy. Why doesn't he do more romance movies? Because I truly think that's his calling. I don't know why he's doing these like weird action films. I really appreciate the fact that he does do them because he looks great in them, but I think his calling are romance movies because the way that he yearns for Keira Knightley's character, the way that he has these really subtle expressions and these subtle noises that he makes throughout the entire film. Oh my god, James McAvoy, why aren't you doing more romance films? I'm so confused. Did his manager look at Atonement and go, you don't need to do another one like that? Atonement is like his only love story that he's been in, and it was absolutely fantastic. Another movie that will stick with you, Past Lives. Another movie that will crush you, and another movie that will make you feel so appreciative of good cinematography and good acting, because golly, Past Lives is beautiful. So we follow our main characters, Nora and Hae Sung, who are two childhood friends. They're reunited in New York for one fateful week as they confront notions of destiny, love, and the choices that make a life. And we follow them during a singular day in New York City where they are reconnecting and they are realizing that they have two very different views of their relationship and their past, and they have very different views of what they want out of this meeting. I can appreciate the tension of unsaid words. I can appreciate the tension of wishing you can confess your love for someone, but knowing that it's not the right time and there may never actually be a right time for you to be together. Past Lives is beautiful. I think it's a directorial debut, so I'm really excited to see this director continue to make films in the future because her vision is beautiful. And I think that Past Lives is definitely a movie that you should not pick up if you're trying to feel good. Don't do it. Don't do it. Maybe on a rainy day, maybe like during a cold winter night, because that's what it feels like for me. It feels like cozying up under a blanket and maybe not feeling the best, you know? And the last movie that I have to talk about is a movie that I decided to put on randomly one day, and it completely rocked my world and just kind of changed me as a movie lover, and it is Cold War. So Cold War follows a man and a woman as they meet in the ruins of post-war Poland. With vastly different backgrounds and temperaments, they are fatally mismatched yet drawn to one another. So we follow these two characters. They have this undeniable connection with one another, and they continue to find one another, similar to that of Past Lives, where they have this really big inkling that they belong to one another, but it never truly feels like the right time. It never truly feels like it's going to stick. I loved this movie because it was filmed in black and white, even though it's a modern film, and I love when people do that. I think it just makes it feel so nostalgic. Cold War really follows the journey of these characters, and I love the way that it passes time. It feels similar to that of Normal People, the book. I haven't watched the show, so I can't say anything about the show, but these characters continue to meet one another throughout the years. They continue to try try and have a relationship with one another, but there's always something in the way. There's always something in the way, whether it be a relationship, their personality, what they're currently going through, and that's what Cold War feels like. But the love story, the overall love is undeniable, and it's beautiful. It's beautifully shot, and it's a movie that I always think about, and I always recommend, even though I don't think anyone I've recommended it to has watched it, but I highly recommend Cold War. Let me know if there are any other sad love stories that you would recommend, because I would love to add them to my watch list. Let me know what are your top 3 favorite love stories of all time in film. And if you want to add me on Instagram or Letterboxd, I have all my social links down below, so you can follow me there so we can connect off of YouTube. And let me know if there are any other themed movie recommendation videos that you would like to see from me in the future. I love chatting about movies, I love watching movies, and I would love to share more movie recommendations with you on this channel. If you have not subscribed, be sure to do so to see more videos from me in the future. And I hope you have a really lovely February. Be kind to one another, and I hope you have a good day. Bye!